Hi, this is your host Swapnil Bhartiya, and we are here at Linode headquarters in Philadelphia. And today we have with us Billy Thompson, Solution Engineering Manager at Akamai Linode. Billy, first of all, it's great to have you on the show.
All right, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I've heard that you travel a lot. You go to tech events a lot. So first of all, tell us a bit about what are the latest event you have been to.
So the latest one was SaaStr in the Bay Area, and that's a conference primarily focused on startups. And our kind of presence there is a little bit different because we're surrounded by a whole bunch of SaaS products, and we're not a SaaS product ourselves. We're trying to let them know about Akamai Linode and that there are alternatives to the other three cloud providers, because the thing is, a lot of them don't even know that. And when kind of asking where they're hosted and then being like, oh, AWS, and asking them why, a lot of the answer is, well, I don't know, right? Because they're still on that burn run with their VC funding. But what we're there to do is to promote our startup program, which I think is a lot more generous than what our other competitors do, where they offer, like a lump sum of credits, and depending on what services of theirs you use depends on how first you burn through those credits. And if you burn through them, then now we're responsible for a bill. So the way ours works is it's a 3-year program. You get 100% off infrastructure costs the first year, up to $10,000 a month, and then 50% off no cap the second year, and then 25% off no cap the third year. And then even that fourth year, when you finally kind of ramped into spend, but you're in a better place, you've had time to develop your product, you're generating revenue. Once you do finally have to hit that full bill, we're still a lot less expensive than the big three. And then bundled in that, you get up to 20 hours of free work from our professional services team in the first quarter if you want help migrating workloads to Linode or re-architecting or scaling, and you get ongoing free consultation from our solutions engineering team.
What kind of trends you are seeing, in the space when we do go to all these events? I do see that one of the pain points that companies are facing these days is complexity that comes with the cloud and cloud cost associated with that. And sometimes they realize that the whole, plumbing is more expensive than the actual product or service that they're trying to build. What are you seeing?
I'm seeing that too. I'm seeing a lot of frustration around cost, and more these days around egress. Egress seems to be the bane of everyone's existence, and kind of especially as you go up the market and you're into more streaming and other things. So that's always been a good point for us to kind of touch on, is we bundle in a bunch of free egress. And when we can show people how much free egress they're getting, that's really attractive. And even if you go over that bundled amount, 1 cent a gig compared to, like 8 cents a gig, like our competitors do. So we're really seeing a trend, and people really want to grip on to just the egress part of it, but also the simplicity of our Kubernetes product. The simplicity of even our NVMe block storage product, right? You look at other providers where you have, I don't know, maybe 11 different options to choose from. You get IOPS optimized, you get this and that, and very little explanation of why you would want one or the other. So the simplicity of just being like, everyone gets the same lightning fast block storage, and it's simple. And so it's a lower barrier to entry to get testing and to get used to. And so a lot of times what we find is someone gets interested, they sign up, they get the free credit, and then once they get on the platform and start trying things out, they're pleasantly surprised.
When you once again talk to folks, are there any specific, we talked about complexity in cloud. Are there any other specific pain point that you, because today people used to say that, hey, every company has to be tech company, which is appropriate, but you should not necessarily be a tech company. That's why we are seeing a lot of low code, no code, because it gets them the stepping stone, they can get started. So what else are you seeing when you talk to a lot of developers who do want to leverage a lot of these technologies, but they also get intimidated at times?
So I think that we have a growing marketplace with a lot of one-click deployments, and that will soon be expanding into one-click clusters, Galera, MongoDB, right, Postgres, and so on, database clusters, and that will extend to Kubernetes clusters too, that will make that easier as well. But also the fact that we are a Terraform provider and that we have an Ansible collection and that we're making it easier for them to programmatically and version control their infrastructure, I think is becoming more and more attractive to them as well.
And just from a technology perspective, the kind of technology that you are seeing, that you are like interested in, that hey, these are the things that are moving forward.
Well, I really believe that, I mean, Kubernetes and just containers in general, right? I really believe that that's just where everything is going. And what I try to explain in a lot of conversations, I think that people who have adopted Kubernetes or who are interested are, very quickly seeing the benefits of it. And I think that there's a lot of hesitation too. And I see this at KubeCon, for example, a lot of people there that are there because their company sent them there to learn more about it. So they can go back and see, is this a viable option for us, and so on. And my belief is that it is for the SMBs, the mid-market, just as much as the enterprises. Because when you think about it, right, that abstraction really gives them the benefit where they can focus on their application, their code. Like we talked about, like our startup program where you don't have to worry about your bill, you can just focus on your product, right? And I feel like Kubernetes gives you that as well. If you take something, for example, so like I recently did a reference architecture on a cloud-based document management system where I demonstrated, and I used Postgres as a backend, but to make it highly available, right? I have 2 Postgres instances. I used an open source tool called Ricardo to figure a bidirectional replication between the two. Now, but those are 2 servers, right? That's more surface area to manage. It's more surface area to secure. If you're using config management tools and so on, that's more version control and so on. As where, let's take the same thing in like a Kubernetes deployment where we can use something like an operator, a Postgres operator, like kubegress, which all we got to do is deploy it. We define some parameters. We define the state that we want. And the operator handles the replication. It handles automatic election of a new primary. If the primary fails, it automatically distributes those pods evenly across the different nodes, and it automatically does backups. Add one Kubernetes cron job on that, just if you want to also pump those backups to S3 storage, it's all there for you, right? So you can just focus on the product itself, right? And you're not worrying about the underlying architecture itself. Add in policies and other things, and then if you want to mix that in with like GitOps, for example, where you can version control your Kubernetes cluster as well as your application, make it part of the CI/CD process, making Git the single source of truth, and just having that declarative infrastructure, that takes away so much. You have way less, you need less network engineers, less server engineers, right? Like so much is just packaged and done there for you. And the fact that it's cloud native, the fact that that's such an expanding landscape, and that that's where everything's going, and that it's all open source and intended to be portable and vendor agnostic. It's beautiful. Like, and it's more and more like that hesitation towards adopting it. Really, it's there to make your life easier, is what it is. And I can see why it's intimidating in the sense that, like, if you take a course, like a Kubernetes 101 course, and at least a lot of the ones that I took when I first started getting involved with it, it started with the beginning of how it all kind of works and bootstrapping your own cluster, which I think is definitely, a good learning step. But that in itself, I can see where that becomes intimidating, because bootstrapping a cluster, right, there's just like this explosion of components that come out. But what that's missing is that, and then when you have like a managed Kubernetes offer and stuff like what we have, you don't have to worry about that. Like all you're worrying about, you're defining YAML files, you're defining the state you want, and it's doing all the heavy lifting for you. You feed it what you want, it gives you results. It makes your life easier. And I think more and more people are starting to realize that, and that's more and more, that's just a regular conversation I have at all these conferences, whether it's a SaaS-based startup conference, whether it's KubeCon, whether it's MongoDB World, you know what I mean? There's just an ongoing, just containers, orchestration tools, service meshes, that's where we're going.
One last question before we wrap this up is that when we do look at all the solutions that you folks are working on, engineering solutions, what impact this acquisition by Akamai had on your team and your plans?
Well, I mean, the acquisition, it's been great so far. Like, they have been very supportive of, keeping Linode. The brand is here to stay, and they just want to help us grow. And at the same time, we're kind of working on this project together. Like, I find it fascinating that Linode being around in 2003, right? That's 3 years before AWS, and basically being, kind of, the original in the cloud infrastructure game. And then Akamai being the ones who invented the CDN 20 years ago or so. So two things that radically just changed this entire industry and what we know today coming together. And then what we're looking to build out in the future is a more distributed cloud, right? Because as it stands, you can run stateless workloads on the edge, but to bring stateful workloads to the edge, databases, containers, and so on. And that actually is something that came up 3 or 4 times at SaaStr, right? There's a lot of business people there, a lot of C-levels, not too many developers and engineers, but a few of the developers and engineers that did come up asked if that's where we were going, and it was nice to say yes.
Billy, thank you so much for taking time out today. And of course, I love, the we are saying when you go to events, the trend that you see where folks, the pain points. So thanks for sharing all those insights. And I would love to talk to you again, or maybe see you at some event in future. Thank you.
All right, thank you.